Hello, this is John Friedland with AGWS. Today, I welcome you to our AGWS University 2020 webinar series presented by Bob Harkins, the Vice President of Training here at AGWS. So welcome, everyone. Cover today compliance and ethics and the protection of the dealer and the dealership. Going to touch on the NADA's Fair Credit Compliance Policy and Program, as well as NADA's Model Dealership Policy for Voluntary Protection Products. And he'll also cover developing a CMS, Compliance Management System. We'd like to draw your attention to our website for all of these past webinars that Bob has done, sometimes with guest speakers, sometimes solo. They're all available on the AGWS website. So if you went to agwsu.com/webinars, you'd be able to reach all of these past presentations that he's done and play them on demand at on your own time schedule. All right, Bob. At this point, I'll let you take over.
Thank you very much, John Friedland. Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to F&I Insights, where once again, our goal, as always, is to help our agent partners and dealer clients to maximize deal profit, meeting both front-end gross and finance and insurance income. But as always, of course, to do it the right way, and the right way is in a manner that's consistent with good customer relations and sound business practices. Just a quick thought about what John just talked about before, the AGWS U webinar series, and the way to access that, agwsu.com/webinars. This is the 12th that we've done since inception. In 2019, we did quarterly webinars, so they were completed in January, April, July, and October. And then by request, we were asked to do monthly webinars for 2020. So we've got, with August now, 12 of them in the books. The great thing is, and John and I were talking earlier, these are not a one and done situation. You can always look these up and use them yourself as part of your training library for in-dealership training, coaching, and development. I can tell you from just kind of an unofficial tally that I keep when I'm requested to do things with respect to this or send out the handouts related to the webinars, whatever, the big three that we've had a tremendous amount of comment on and asking for help, and some leading to in-dealership training that we've been able to provide, been able to be with you in our stores. But two of them are two of the ones that we completed this year. One is the February 12th, 2020 webinar, Successful Menu Selling 2.0. A lot of feedback on that, and a lot of you have had access to the handouts that we did with that, especially as it relates to menu introductions and presenting options and conversational selling as opposed to monologue and dialogue. Also this year, the April 2020 webinar, I was joined by AFIP's Dave Robertson. Dave, as you know, is Executive Director and President of AFIP. And the F&I Insights webinar for April, the primary topic that we talked about, and Dave did a great job with this, and that is preloading products or services. Preloading products or services, is it legal or illegal? So if you have clients or if you're a store that's doing that or considering doing that, that would be a great thing for you to get and review. And have any questions, please feel free to contact us or directly to our good friend Dave Robertson as well. Then quite frankly, I would say the other one that we get a lot of feedback on is really the very first webinar that we did. And that was in January 2019, January 16th. And that, of course, is the 3 R's that maximize deal profit. And those 3 R's are refocus, recommit, and reassess. But again, our goal is to help you with your training library and your in-dealership training, coaching, and development. So, John, let's go back to the CMS Compliance Management System. Again, the #1 hot button topic in our industry after COVID-19 is compliance and ethics, F&I in the law, selling with integrity, and the need really for every dealership in America to establish an in-house effective ongoing compliance and ethics program, now commonly referred to by both the FTC, the CFPB, and attorneys general as a CMS or compliance management system. From a disclaimer standpoint, this is for my protection personally, the protection of the American Guardian group of companies, and quite frankly, ultimately for your protection as well. Disclaimer very simply is this: when we get into these things today, please remember that I am certainly not an attorney. I don't pretend to be. So nothing that we say, give, or show you this afternoon is in any way intended as legal advice. It's something to help you look at, evaluate, and if necessary, perhaps, improve the overall effectiveness of your business policies, your business practices. Obviously, consult with your attorney, your qualified attorney, your house counsel regarding the legality of any policies or services, the programs that you would ultimately change or adopt. Last month's webinar, in part, one of our bullet point topics was Zig Ziglar's 7 steps of goal setting. And the first 3 steps that we talked about last month from Zig Ziglar's 7 steps was establish your goals, write them down, and develop your plan of attack. Establish your goals, write them down, and develop a plan of attack. I've had many people for several years now contact me with help to develop a CMS compliance management system. And that's what this 10-step checklist is initially all about. So when you think about it, as Zig would say, a goal without a plan is a wish. A goal without a plan is a wish. So if your goal is to establish a CMS or compliance management system, instead of having a wish, this 10-step checklist can serve as maybe an initial plan to help you get started to create that CMS or go back and review what you have. So let's go through this together. As we start these 10 bullet points, I would encourage you to do some homework and go to your website, your computer, whatever, when you have some spare time, and pull up information written by Terry O'Loughlin. Terry O'Loughlin is a good friend of mine. He's an attorney. I talk about him a lot. I have the opportunity to introduce him in many meetings around the country as far as the summits that are done, Agent Summit, Compliance Summit, and things of that nature. Terry is an attorney. He's the Director of Compliance for Reynolds & Reynolds, and prior to that, he was an attorney and investigator in the state of Florida as it relates to the Attorney General's office in reviewing things relating to automobile sales and unfair and deceptive acts and practices. Terry has an article that he calls the Compliance Officer Come Up. I would encourage you to get that from Terry. Just go to his website, the Reynolds & Reynolds website. You can work through that and pull that up. The Compliance Officer Cometh is a great piece as it relates to developing a CMS. Likewise, another great piece is from Hudson Cook partner, Patty Covington, and also David Childers. Dave is the CEO of Complete, and together, both David and Patty did an article called 4 Steps to CFPB Compliance. So between the Compliance Officer Cometh from Terry O'Loughlin and 4 Steps to CFPB Compliance from Hudson Cook's Patty Covington and Dave Childers, CEO of Complete, be a couple great things to add to your library as it relates to developing this particular CMS. So, number 1, appoint an appropriate compliance personnel. Safeguards rule, and we need a program coordinator and red flags rule. Let's talk about board of directors / senior management. Whether or not you have a compliance officer or not, both of these rules, the safeguards rule and the red flags rule, require that you develop somebody to oversee them. And the safeguards rule requires that that person have the title of program coordinator. I would remind you with the safeguards rule, program coordinator, you may be with a dealer group or a group of stores that are part of your organization. And what the safeguards rule says, among many other things, is that you need a program coordinator for each dealership that's in that group. Sometimes I come across an opportunity to do some things in a store, and they may be a mega dealer group, whatever. They have one coordinator and does a great job, but the safeguards rule itself says we need a program coordinator for each dealership in the group. Now, red flags rule, we have written there, board of directors / senior management. What that implies and what that says from a red flags rule standpoint, if you are a public company, and I know most of you aren't, but if you are a public company, the person or people in charge of the red flags rule, as far as coordinating it from a red flags rule standpoint, has to be the board of directors, or an appropriate committee of the board of directors. And then if you're not a public company, you don't have a board of directors, an appropriate committee of the board of directors, most of us, the next 2 words would apply. The red flags rule must be set up, maintained, and overseen by someone from the level of senior management in the dealership. So senior management is the requirement for the red flags rule, person to oversee, and then safeguards rule for each store individually, a program coordinator as well. Number 2 says what? Conduct risk assessments. And risk assessments are a requirement of both the safeguards rule and the red flags rule as well. So both of them require some work and risk assessments. And we'll talk about getting you some help on how to do that if you need some assistance in putting that together or reviewing it. Numbers 3 and 4 talk about the actual programs themselves. Number 3, after conducting risk assessments, number 3, create a written information security program. Create a written information security program. That goes back to May 2003, and that's an FTC safeguards rule requirement. So it has to be a written information security program dating back to May of 2003. There's 5 required elements with respect to that, 5 required elements. And very briefly, let me just tell you what those 5 required elements are. You may want to jot it down. Element number 1, from a requirement standpoint, is you have to designate a program coordinator. Number 2, you have to conduct a risk assessment. So number 1 and number 2, to designate a program coordinator. Number 2, conduct a risk assessment. Number 3, develop the written information security program. Number 4, oversee service providers that work with and for your dealership. Oversee your service providers. And last but not least, number 5, is review and update periodically the program. And with the red or the safeguards rule requirement, there's no training frequency requirement, but the best practices is recommended by Hudson Cook and AFIP and others, whatever, is at least once a year you're reviewing and updating that program. So again, May of 2003, written information program, 5 required elements. Number 4, an ITPP, create a written identity theft prevention program. That initially was to have gone into effect was November of 2008. And if you were in the business at that time, they know that there were numerous delays and pushbacks with respect to that for a lot of different reasons. And that really didn't become effective from a law compliance standpoint until much later. And that would be December 31st, 2010 to be exact. But nonetheless, it requires a written identity theft prevention program. And with the ITPP, there's 4 required elements. Those 4 required elements are just quick kind of one-worders. Number 1, you have to identify the red flags for your store. You have to identify the red flags for your store. We'll talk about giving you some help to do that in just a minute. Part of that help, though, does come from the Federal Trade Commission. And the Federal Trade Commission, in their program and booklet with respect to driven publications on red flags, they give us really 26 illustrative examples. The FTC provides you with 26 illustrative examples that might be a red flag for your store. What I found over the years that among that list among the 26 illustrative examples, probably 15 or 18 would be applicable to most dealerships. So you want to kind of pick those out if they're applicable for your store, then obviously add to that to have the appropriate red flags for your dealership. So identify red flags for your store is number 1. Number 2 is detect. How do I detect red flags that are occurring in my store? And I would remind you that the FTC definition of red flags, the red flags rule, a red flag is a pattern, practice, or specific activity that indicates the possible existence of identity theft. So identity theft doesn't have to necessarily be occurring to be a violation of a red flag rule. A red flag is a pattern, practice, or specific activity that indicates the possible existence of identity theft. So numbers 1 and 2, identify and detect. Number 3 is respond to what you did in 1 and 2. That means write your program. And then number 4 is review or update it. And here's the requirement. This is the difference from the safeguards rule. The red flags rule requires an update annually, and a report must be given. If you're a public company, has to be given to the board or the appropriate committee of the board. And then if you're non-public, obviously you'll be giving that to your dealer or your dealership management team. So once again, the 5 required elements with respect to information security program, and then for identity theft, ITPP, 4 required elements as well. We stay with that for just a minute. If you need help in putting that together, if you're a NADA member, new car dealership, go to NADA or NADA University or NADA Driven Publications, Driven, D-R-I-V-E-N, and pull up their publication entitled FTC Red Flags and Address Discrepancy Rules. FTC Red Flags and Address Discrepancy Rules. That has those 26 examples and a lot of other information, obviously, on how to comply with the red flags rule. Now, to me, much better than that, and certainly from the standpoint of hands-on help, initially and continuous help or whatever, is to go to AFIP. I would talk to Linda Robertson with respect to this, and let Linda talk with you about AFIP's dealer aid solutions. They call it NPI solutions, which stands for non-public personal information. And the first step they'll tell you about is to appoint a corporate compliance officer. Step number 2 is to contact them. And after you contact them and get involved with their team, they're going to help you with one-on-one support right from the start, help you put those risk assessments together, help you tailor your program to your unique needs. That would be, the 26 more or less red flags that you come up with, and also an opportunity for installation and ongoing management. But the beauty of this, when this is completed, and I've seen a number of these around the country, when it's completed, you're going to have, if you're ever challenged by a regulator, a state, federal, whatever, you'll have a single hand it to a regulator binder. I love that title. You'll have a single hand it to a regulator binder that houses all your NPI material in one place. So think about how that can really help you if you're challenged by any kind of state or federal regulatory agency. I guess we're ready for number 5, comply with the FTC address discrepancy rule. This goes back to really 2008. There were never any extensions on that. The FTC address discrepancy rule applies to dealers who order consumer credit reports, and we certainly do that. And the notice of address discrepancy requirement, the initial requirement, is on that of the credit reporting agency. And when you submit that credit application information to the credit reporting agency, if they notice a substantial difference, and that's the word that's used in the Act, a substantial difference between the address that you're giving them and the address that they have on that file, they're going to hit you with a notice of address discrepancy requirement to contact that customer, do your due diligence, and determine if that address, which address is right, which address is correct, and does the customer that's in your office, do they really go with that credit report from that credit reporting agency, credit reporting transaction agency. So it applies to all business transactions, order credit reports. The notice of address discrepancy requirement has to be a substantial difference in address, and that goes back to 2008. The bottom line is what that law says, the address discrepancy rule says that you cannot open a covered account. Open a covered account, and the definition of a covered account is a retail installment sale contract or consumer lease. So you cannot complete the deal, open a covered account, a retail installment sale contract, or consumer lease until all of these discrepancies have been cleared. And then that way you can now open your account. Number 6, the ever popular OFAC. OFAC, the Office of Foreign Assets Control. President Bush, less than 2 weeks after the events of 9/11, significantly expanded the powers of OFAC and changed our business life and dealerships ever since. It applies to all business transactions, and the requirement is to check every customer against what's referred to as the SDN list, especially designated nationals and blocked persons list. What many of us miss sometimes, and I know this is a question I think that David added or changed to the AFIP exam, is we have to check the customer, check OFAC as of the date of the transaction, So when you think about that, the date of the transaction, when the date that they sign that retail installment sale contract. So that means with many people, you might be checking it twice. Today, when I'm making the decision to buy, to see if I'm qualified to do that or not on the list, and then on Friday when I come back in for whatever reason and sign the retail installment sale contract. So sometimes the OFAC, the list will go, who knows, a week, 10 days, maybe even 2 weeks without the changing. And then as Carla says, it can change 3 times in the next 5 days. So the requirement is you have to check it as of the date of the transaction. As you know, and we talk about this in our training classes, both when you visit us in Warrenville at our home office and when we do training with you in the store, the penalties for non-compliance with OFAC are very harsh. They don't mess around. Criminal penalties, jail time is up to 30 years, up to 30 years in jail. The fines are up to $10 million per count against corporations, and also up to $5 million per count against individuals. So criminal penalties, jail time up to 30 years, corporation fines up to 10 million, individuals, the fines up to $5 million. And then for civil money penalties, they're very heavy as well, and they now range to well over $1 million for civil penalties. So OFAC is not anything to play with, and not that you would have to do it on every transaction, but whenever you have an OFAC check or an OFAC account that you want to talk to them about or need to talk to them about, or an OFAC hit, the OFAC hotline, here it is 800-540-6322. OFAC hotline is 800-540-6322. Number 8, comply with the IRS cash reporting rule and money laundering statutes. Recommendation, develop a written policy statement for that and document your training. We do a lot of that around the country. We've been in that the next 2 weeks in both Chattanooga, Tennessee and Cleveland, Ohio, in front of nearly 300 people doing this. I hope we have appropriate distancing, whatever, but the majority of that training is the IRS cash reporting rule, money laundering statutes, talking about payment packing and both NADA programs, which we'll get to in just a minute. I will tell you that the penalties with respect to cash reporting and money laundering have increased for 2020. Intentional disregard of the cash reporting rule, meaning you're not doing the 8,300 within 15 days of the receipt of the cash, it takes you over $10,000. For this year, 2020, the penalty for intentional disregard is the lesser or a minimum of $27,820, $27,820, or the dollar amount that you were required to report but failed to do so, up to a maximum penalty amount of $111,000. So that's an increase from 2019. $27,820 for the dollar amount that you were required to report but failed to do so, up to a maximum of $111,000. So the way that works, if you have a deal that's, pick a number, $42,000, you don't report it, you get hit with that for intentional disregard. The fine is not $27,820 or $111,000. It would be the $42,000. Structuring is a felony. That's when you advise a customer of ways to pay for the vehicle to avoid the cash reporting requirements. Structuring is a felony. It's a criminal offense. Those penalties have gone up as well. And for 2020, the fees or fines for structuring, are you ready for this, is $1,113,000. $1,113,000 and or 5 years in prison or both. So $1,113,000 or up to 5 years in jail or both. And just 3 or 4 years ago, that dollar amount was $500,000. So it's more than doubled. All right, let's move along. Number 8, add a compliance component to compensation plans. A lot of stores have done that. Reward for compliance, and if we do that properly, compliance may become an instant priority in your store. Recommending annual compliance audits, dealership self-audits. That may be done by a member of the management team, your compliance officer, may be done by your agent partners within the store, whatever. But the recommendation is that in addition to that, you want to have an outside independent audit consultant done at least on an annual basis, primarily because of objectivity. Are we objective, the person that's actually doing the audit, and also eliminating any challenge to the fact that there is conflicting self-interest by the person who's conducting that audit themselves. And then next, we have number 10, develop an effective C&E program, create your written policies and procedures for sales and F&I, and consider some certification. AFIP certification is a great way to go, and institute training at all levels. So there you have just a 10-step quick checklist to help you look at what you have or don't have now, or get started with your CMS or compliance management system. Want a copy of this or copies of it, want to talk about it, whatever, know how to reach me, and be happy to get together and chat with you about that. But basically, your CMS is a formal written program when it's done. A formal written program is built into every phase or stage of your operation That would be from advertising to sales to F&I and back-end processes. And what you ultimately have when you're done is executive oversight. You have written compliance programs, a complaint resolution program that's designed to log, track, and investigate and resolve complaints, and then also an independent compliance audit on an annual basis as well. So that would be your CMS or compliance management system. John, next slide, please, sir. Got to move along. From the NADA Fair Credit Compliance Policy and Program. This is their Appendix D, the Dealer Participation Certification Form. We've talked about this in several of our webinars. We do a lot of this in store because probably 40% of the dealerships in America are utilizing this program. We're told that all the public companies are utilizing it. The NADA Fair Credit Compliance Policy and Program. This was written by NADA's Paul Mitri, VP of Regulatory Affairs and also Chief Counsel for Financial Services, and Paul wrote this in 2014. But for those of you that were in business at the time, you might remember that the genesis or origin of the necessity for this program took place in December of 2013, January of 2014. And that's when some big news hit, and that was the Department of Justice, the DOJ, and the CFPB, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, announced at the time the largest auto loan discrimination settlement in US history, $98 million. That was against Ally Bank and Ally Financial, $98 million. That was $80 million in settlements or refunds to customers, and $18 million went into the CFPB Civil Penalty Fund. 3 other financial institutions were hit, in addition to Ally, American Honda Finance, Fifth Third Bank, and also TMCC, Toyota Motor Credit Corporation. The charge was the same for all of these actions, and that is engaging in an ongoing nationwide pattern or practice of discrimination against African Americans, Asian Americans, and Hispanics, in that they're being charged higher APRs than white customers with similar credit profiles. So as a result of that, NADA came sometime later with the Fair Credit Compliance Policy and Program. What makes this work, if you're looking for a way to just have regulation in your store and an opportunity to self-regulate, the certification form is completed on every deal. And what you do is you set a standard dealership participation rate for every finance source that you have. A lot of the stores that I've worked with over the years, they've set a 2-point rate above the buy rate. So the bottom line is, if the buy rate's 5, the customer rate's initial rate would be 7. If the buy rate is 6, the customer rate would be 8. So I would never go above the 7 or 8, but there's 7 allowable reasons that I can come back and drop that rate to retain the business. And the great news of this is that these 7 allowable reasons have already been approved by the Department of Justice because of previous court cases. So what are these 7 allowable reasons? Going down the left-hand side, dealer participation limited by finance source. You certainly have that a lot. Second one, customer stated a monthly payment constraint of whatever, $450 a month or $580 a month, whatever. So you check that. That's the reason why you drop the rate to get to that. That's your documentation. Customer stated competing offer by Last National Bank, whatever it is, name of the bank and what the percent was. Customer qualified for a dealership promotional financing campaign. Customer qualified for a subvened interest rate from a source. Then the last 2, customer qualified for dealership employee incentive program, and customer purchased a vehicle that satisfies the dealership's predetermined inventory reduction criteria, describe how a vehicle satisfies the criteria. So these 7 allowable reasons, as I mentioned earlier, have both been approved by the Department of Justice. So you're on sound ground with this program and with these 7 allowable reasons to drop that standard dealership participation rate and reduce it to whatever your final dealership participation rate would be. On the left-hand side, signature date, print a name and title. That's the person that worked with the customer with respect to that. Then on the right-hand side, where it says reviewer certification, the 18-page booklet that NADA has with respect to this requests that a reviewer reviews this deal, all your deals within 2 days of the transaction, and that person would sign off on the deal as well. But notice how this reads. Reviewer certification, I have reviewed the above information and supporting documentation, and box number 1, certify that the final dealer participation rate complies with our Fair Credit Compliance Policy Program, or box 2, certify that I have initiated the corrective action noted below. That might be reduce the customer's interest rate to what %, or provided a refund to the customer in the amount of X amount of dollars, and then taken the following employee corrective action, describe what that is, other describe, and then signature, date, printed name, and title. So the bottom line is documentation beats conversation. Documentation beats conversation. So if you ever challenge, you now have a statistically verifiable reason for the rate quoted with that customer and what's on the retail installment sale contract. John, next slide. This gets into the NADA, Model Dealership Policy for Voluntary Protection Products. NADA came with that just last year. And again, also written by Paul Mitri. Paul is, again, the Director of Regulatory Affairs, Chief Counsel for Financial Services. This is also an 18-page booklet, but really the policy itself is just two pages, and then 2 appendices, and the rest of it is instructions on how to complete how to complete the program. So what this is that we're looking at is a voluntary protection products policy that's recommended as a display poster within clear view of the prospective customers. You would find this on page 17 of the program itself. But notice how this reads: name of dealership, Harkins Honda, my store, offers vehicle service contracts and other voluntary products that are designed to protect your investment in a vehicle you purchase or lease from us. The purchase of any of these voluntary protection products is completely optional and is not required to purchase or lease a vehicle or obtain warranty coverage, financing on particular terms, or any other product or service offered by the dealership. Harkins Honda is fully committed to providing you the price, terms, and conditions of each voluntary protection product before you decide to purchase it. So again, policy, a display poster within clear view of the prospective customer. A great resource or a gentleman to contact that I've mentioned before on some of our webinars is Mega Dealer here in Texas, where I live, Charlie Gilchrist. You may know that last name. Charlie was the 2019 NADA chairman, Texas Mega Dealer, and he has both of these programs in full use and force in his store, and has told me, hey, I can refer anybody to him that they want to call him and just ask him how these programs are working in his dealership. That would be the NADA Model Dealership Policy for Voluntary Protection Products, as well as the NADA Fair Credit Compliance Policy and Program as well. And he'll tell you the straight up results that it's done for his organization. John, next slide, sir. Also from the Model Dealership Policy for Voluntary Protection Products, documentation beats conversation. The recommendation for this is that we set a standard retail price for every product in our store. Standard retail price for every product in our store. So in the middle of the page, as we go from left to right, we have the name of the voluntary protection product or the specific bundle and the standard retail price. Now the allowable discounts, the idea is we will never go up or above the standard retail price. We will discount downward. Now these are recommendations from NADA. They're not from any legal entity. They're not from the DOJ the way it was for the Fair Credit Compliance Policy and Program, but the recommendation of NADA legal. What are the allowable discounts for dropping the standard retail price? Discount 1, the voluntary protection product is limited by pricing or payment cap. Number 2, customer stated monthly payment constraint. I mean, think of the ways that you can use that positively. Number 3, customer stated a competing offer from whatever. Number 4, customer qualified for a dealership promotional VPP campaign. And then number 5, customer qualified for dealership employee incentive program. So go back to the body of this program, the form itself. We have the standard retail price, and then you have the selling price that you fill in just to the right of that. Then the next 3 boxes, you check the one that applies. The one right in the middle, if selling price is less than retail price, enter the number of the allowable discount in the list below. So that's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that we just read. Next to the right, if discount 2 is selected, meaning customer stated monthly payment constraint. If discount 2 is selected, enter the amount of the monthly payment constraint. So everything is documented. Documentation beats conversation. Then the last one on the right, if discount number 3 is selected, customer stated competing offer. If discount 3 is selected, enter the name of the competing offeror and the price of the competing offer itself. And then, like the previous program form, bottom left-hand corner, I certified that the information above is true and correct to the best of my knowledge, that any discount from the standard retail price was made in good faith and in a manner that is consistent with the requirements of our dealership's voluntary protection products policy. So signature date, printed name and title. And then once again, within 2 days of the completing the deal, reviewer certification. I've reviewed the above information and supporting documentation and certify that selling price complies with the name of our dealership's VPP policy, or certify that I have initiated the corrective action noted below. And what might that be? Reduce the customer's selling price for whatever the product to, or provided a refund to the customer in the amount of blank, taken the following corrective action described, and then other described as it relates to employee action. So documentation beats conversation. So I'll tell you, and doing a lot of compliance and ethics workshops for a lot of years now, I hear people say, man, we're regulated to the hilt. I remember being at NADA and earlier this year in Vegas and going by the booth, and I get their compliance updates and the regulatory maze, and I opened it up and did the count, and just on federal regulations alone, going into 2020, the number was 103 federal regulations that we have to comply with and or are under the umbrella of. 103. That doesn't include anything that's state, local, county, whatever, but 103 federal regulations. So between these two programs, the NADA, Fair Credit Compliance Policy and Program, and the one that we just looked at, the NADA Model Leadership Policy for Voluntary Protection Products. If you, your dealer, your dealership attorney, your house counsel, if you are truly looking for a statistically verifiable and legally defensible basis for the quoted rate or APR, as well as the retail price charged for your optional voluntary protection products, then these two programs are for you. So now you have an opportunity to, instead of being regulated, self-regulate and develop these programs for yourself. John, next slide, sir. From page 16 of the data program on optional voluntary protection products, here we have 8 guidelines that are recommended by NADA with this program that your people sign off on. Number 1, or the first part, is the dealership will inform customers orally that the VPPs it offers are optional. Number 2, the second bullet point there, the dealership will present VPPs to customers in a standard simple menu format that at a minimum prominently discloses. And before we get into that, to me, a standard simple menu format, I'm a pretty simple guy. So if I look up simple, that means uncomplicated, easy to understand, and having only one or a few parts. You've heard me say this a lot. You've heard me present it in stores, and I truly believe it, that the best menu to work with is a single column menu. Maybe the second column is a custom column, and it eliminates the redundancy, and it helps the customer in their thinking about the 3 questions that are on their mind of every customer. Can I trust you? Are you credible, and do you care? Can I trust you? Are you credible, and do you care? So, we review the top of the menu with the customer. Mr. Customer, these are the terms and conditions under which you can take delivery of your purchase today with your approved credit. You can see the amount financed is $28,000. Your monthly payment is $452.90. That's for a period of 72 months at an annual percentage rate of 5.4%. So I need you, if you would, your initial right here by this payment, this is certify and confirm that this is correct. After that, my menu introduction. Mr. Customer, here's a menu breakdown of your optional voluntary protection products that are available to protect your credit and your investment. Folks, as you can see, our unique financial package here at Harkins Honda is comprised of 5 options. The great news is you can choose all 5 of these options. Quite frankly, folks, you can choose none of them, because nothing is required or is a condition of financing. Or folks, if you like many of our clients, many of our customers here at the dealership, what you can really do is this column indicates here, truly mix and match these 5 options, and again, truly customize a plan that fits your driving habits and ownership experiences perfectly. Folks, which of these options would work best for you and your family this afternoon? See what they say. Start the conversation and watch the time problem disappear as it relates to the customer being in the office, because you want to talk about what they want to talk about, not what you want to present. So presenting VPPs to customers in a standard, simple menu format that at a minimum promptly discloses. And what are these 8 things? Number 1, that the purchase of any listed VPP is optional. Number 2, that any listed VPP may be purchased separately. Number 3, that the purchase of any listed VPP is not required to purchase or lease the vehicle or to obtain warranty coverage, qualify for financing, or receive financing on particular terms. John, next slide, sir. Number 4, that the listed VPPs or the protections they provide may be available from other sources. It's an interesting ad. Think about the transparency, if you have that. If you're really committed to, we do business the right way, RHITT, that stands for 5 principles. R stands for respect, H stands for honesty, I stands for integrity, the first T stands for transparency, the last T stands for trust. So number 4, that the listed VPPs or the protections they provide may be available from other sources. Number 5, total transparency, that the dealer may retain a portion of the sale price of the listed VPPs. 6, 7, and 8, the price of a monthly payment for the vehicle without the purchase of a VPP. That would be the vehicle-only payment, base vehicle-only payment, based upon the terminology that you're using in your store with your recommendation of your house counsel. The price of a monthly payment for each VPP is purchased separately. And number 8, the price of a monthly payment for each product bundle if VPPs are purchased as a bundle. So all of this with verbiage to go with it and discussion points, whatever, are found in the 18-page booklet from NADA, the NADA Model Dealership Policy for voluntary protection products. John? To wrap that up, we recommend, and we always talk about this because it's so important. We have a lot of our stores that are really doing this and they're developing their own. But when we work with our agent partners and dealer clients, we certainly recommend that mission statements are developed and people in dealerships sign off on them. So the mission statement that we recommend as it relates to product sales is something like this, very basic. Every customer knows what they're getting. They agree to buy it, they know why they need it, and they feel good about it when they leave the dealership. Think about that. Every customer knows what they're getting, they agree to buy it, they know why they need it, and they feel good about it when they leave our store, when they leave the dealership. Think about the repeat and referral business. Can I trust you? Are you credible and do you care? Our unique financial package is available to almost everyone and designed to protect what? Your family budget, number 1. Number 2, your investment, your increasing investment, your good credit, your personal savings, and last but not least, perhaps even the vehicle itself. And again, we offer this because we care, we really do. Not just about your business today, but folks, we care about gaining your respect and earning your repeat and referral business for the future as well. Folks, what can be better than that? Finally, our AGWSU training value statement that we have as an organization that we would present if need be. Our AGWSU training value statement, very simply is this: we endorse and teach. We endorse and teach the industry standard and best practices that are recommended by NADA. We went through a couple of those very quickly today. Number 1, by AFIP, the Association of Finance and Insurance Professionals. That's certainly not being involved with the 7 deadly sins of F&I, but complying with the AFIP Code of Ethics. And last but not least, the AGWS Seller Code of Conduct, the American Guardian Warranty Services Seller Code of Conduct for retail sales, which serves as a guide to the proper sales practices for all retail sellers of our AGWS products. Bottom line is our commitment, as we said earlier, as always, is to help you maximize deal profit, both front-end gross and financial insurance income, but as always, doing it the right way the right way in a manner consistent with good customer relations and sound business practices. I want to just thank you for joining us today. Please feel free to contact me by phone, by text, by email. You want to set up some training in store or a workshop or just a discussion, maybe just a telephone conference call with people that, with respect to your agency or your dealership. Just we'll set a time and be happy to do that with you and share that information with you as well. And now back to Mr. Friedland, John Friedland, to wrap it up for us today. John?
Yeah, thank you very much, Bob. Always valuable information. Appreciate it. So just again, we wanted to touch on our webinar series that is available through our website. All these are on demand. You can listen to those as your time permits. So please take a look at that sometime in the future. And then there at the bottom is Bob's phone number. It's a little bit small, but I'll read it off to anybody if they want to jot it down. 817-205-1240. Again, that's 817-205-1240. And then please take some time and check out the AGWS LinkedIn profile. Go ahead and like and follow us on that. Also, we put out some information via social media on that LinkedIn page. Always updating that each and every month. And then our future F&I Insights schedule for 2020. Next one will be on September 9th at 1 o'clock, that Wednesday. And there are the other dates after that. So October 14th, November 11th, and December 9th. So mark your calendars. Okay, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to myself or Bob Harkins. And thank you again for joining us today. Appreciate it.